Iraq's military, Kurdish forces, and Shiite militias are teaming up to try and free the town of Amerli in northern Iraq. Thousands of Shiites are under siege by Islamic State Sunni militants. The town has been under siege for 2 months now. The UN has called for urgent action to stop a massacre in that town. For more on this story, I'm joined now by Colonel Wes Martin. He's a former anti-terrorism and force protection officer of all the coalition forces in Iraq. And thank you so much and welcome back to our broadcast.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You coming in. Well, the Islamic State clearly on the move, acquiring land, recruiting, terrorizing people. The UK has raised the terror alert there. Why have so many been caught flat-footed by this group?
There is no reason they should have been caught flat-footed. This organization is an outgrowth of what was established by Sakawi many years ago, except our own administration, the Barack Obama administration, has been supporting Nouri al-Maliki over and over, despite all the atrocities that he's been doing on the Sunni population and the harassment he's been doing to the Kurds and denying them equipment. You can only push people so far, and then they're gonna, the youth especially, they're going to rise up. And when the Sunni extremists came from across the Syrian border, they could have been defeated real quick. Unfortunately, Maliki did nothing. His forces ran, left the equipment behind so that the extremists were able to capture that. And as you saw initially, when they ran up against the Kurds, the ISIS was stopped cold. But then they get the equipment from Mosul, they get it from Tikrit, they get it from Balad, which was supposed to go to the Kurds in the first place when the Americans left. Now they're armed and they're ready.
Well, obviously in recent weeks in the past, the U.S. has pushed back against Nouri al-Maliki, anxious for him to get out. Someone new is in, but we don't have the government completely in place. But why now we have U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry calling on a global coalition to support the military force? Why is the U.S. the only one launching airstrikes at this point?
The U.S. has the capabilities. We have the resources available. We could have airstrikes coming in from other places, but these countries have been waiting to see the U.S. provide some kind of leadership. And even then, I got to tell you, the amount of airstrikes, up until a week ago, the press has been talking about all these airstrikes that's been coming in from the U.S. military. There were less bombs dropped than was in a single B-52 that flew over Vietnam and dropped them on the Ho Chi Minh Trail.
When Secretary Kerry came out today in an op-ed actually calling on a global coalition, what does he mean by this?
What he wants to do is put together something, my interpretation, he wants to put together what George H.W. Bush did in the first Gulf War. But you remember, George H.W. Bush had lots of time because Saddam took Kuwait, but he wasn't taking anything else. The Sunnis in that region that's being terrorized, the Kurds and the Shia down to the south, they don't have time. They don't have 3 or 4 months. They're being slaughtered today. The United States needs to really lead out and not try to call for a global coalition. Let them come in as the fight goes on.
Secretary Kerry and Defense Secretary Hagel from the United States are actually going to be holding meetings in NATO next week. What do you expect to come out of this, and which countries do you believe, obviously the UK, the US, are the most threatened by the Islamic State?
Right now, all of Western Europe is threatened by the Islamic State. And I was glad to see Prime Minister David Cameron come right out and say, we're raising the threat level. In all honesty, we should be increasing the threat concerns and threat levels in the United States, because just like with England, they're coming back and forth. We're already seeing that within the United States, and Major Hussein has already said he wants to be part of ISIS. Well, what happened if he had waited, say, 5 years instead of killing people when he did at Fort Hood? He ends up deciding, well, I want to be part of ISIS now, and he goes on a rampage. We have a lot of sleeper agents that we don't know about and disgruntled people. Now, there's something I've got to say. Not all Muslims are terrorists, and not all terrorists are Muslims. The Muslim population, I have worked with, and I'm very close with thousands of them. They don't like this any more than we do. They need help. They need decisiveness. They don't need us to wait 2 or 3 months to put together a grand coalition to go and fight. They need our help today.
Of course not. No religion advocates this kind of terror. Absolutely. Do you believe their tactics are scaring people? The crucifixions, the beheadings, these mass burials, is it that? Or is it the fact that they're taking over town after town?
All the above. They are taking over town and after town. But part of terror is not only the act, but the message that you send out because of that terror, and it causes people to become really scared and run away. When the Iraqi military ran away from initial ISIS, you had a few hundred people, ISIS coming into Mosul, and thousands of Iraqi soldiers ran. And part of it was terror, but part of it, they just didn't want to fight for Nouri al-Maliki.
Alrighty. Colonel Wes Martin, we really appreciate your time and insight. Thank you for coming back, and
Thank you.
We hope to speak with you again in the near future.